A couple of years ago, I did an interview on NARA FM with a spokesperson from Dogs Trust Ireland about puppy farms, and I've done over 10 interviews in the last few years about animals. Like most of you, I've been disturbed over the last few months to learn of a big increase in Ireland in the number of dogs getting stolen. Well, now on the line is Laura Broxson, a spokesperson for the National Animal Rights Association. Laura, welcome to the programme.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, Laura, I know that you and NARA believe in sticking up for the rights of all animals, not just dogs. We are going
Absolutely.
we're going to talk today, though, mostly about dogs, and we can, if you want, do another interview at another time, more in depth about other aspects of your work. First of all, can you tell me a bit about who NARA are in general?
Yeah, we're a voluntary grassroots level organisation. So we were set up in 2007 and we engage in pressure campaigns. So that basically means we pick one target or issue at a time and focus on it until we achieve our goal. So an example of that would be, say, protesting fur shops until they stop selling fur. We also had a big campaign to ban fur farming in Ireland, and it was approved by government. So we're trying to keep things as consistent when we focus on one issue. And at the moment, our big issue is trying to ban hare coursing.
Okay, I'll ask you about hare coursing in a few minutes. I've done a couple of interviews with Bernie Wright from the Alliance of Animal Rights. What's the difference between yourselves and the Alliance of Animal Rights?
Just in terms of like tactics, maybe protest style, but we're basically, animal rights is the same thing essentially. So different groups focus on different issues. At the moment, they'd be primarily focused on greyhound racing, whereas we're primarily focused on hare coursing at the moment, but they both kind of tie in together. So as many animal rights groups as there are around the country, we all sort of help each other with our campaigns, and the more we all do collectively, the better the chance we have of all achieving our goals.
Okay, and you are a vegan organisation, aren't you?
Yes, we are.
Okay, to talk more about dogs, what advice would you give our listeners, Laura, including if any politicians or any other influential people are listening to this, on the issues of dogs getting stolen and puppy farms?
Well, I mean, first of all, in regard to puppy farms, we want puppy farming banned completely. We understand that the Dog Breeding Establishments Act was updated, and there's more regulations and more things required of dog breeders to do, but it just simply isn't enough. You know, we have thousands of dogs in pounds all over the country. Our motto is, like a lot of rescues, motto would be adopt, don't shop. There's no need to profit from an animal, and there's no need to purchase an animal. So we want puppy farming abolished completely. So that would be number one. And then in terms of keeping dogs safe from being stolen, what needs to change is the law and how these laws are enforced. At the moment, animals, even dogs, are seen more as property rather than sentient living creatures, and there needs to be a change in the law in that direction. And then when anything does happen, there needs to be a full investigation, there needs to be pulse numbers on the Garda system, there needs to be follow through and enforcement, and people need to be afraid to do anything like that to animals. They need to be wary that if they do get caught, they're going to be either sent to prison or made pay tens of thousands. There's nothing putting people off at the moment, and that's part of the problem.
I understand that James Brown, TD, the Fianna Fáil TD for Wexford, is drafting legislation to make it a more serious crime if you're caught stealing a dog. Like currently, it's not a very serious crime, whereas if his legislation gets brought in, it will be a lot more serious. So that's very good. I hope to interview James over the next month or two, you know.
Yeah, it's a step in the right direction, definitely.
Yeah, when I was interviewing Dogs Trust a couple of years ago, they were saying the same thing as you're saying as regards puppy farms, adopt, don't shop. And they also said that if you are going to buy a dog from like someone, asked to see the mother of the dog to see is she in good condition, is she okay? But you believe in banning the sale of dogs in general, do you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't make this industry right. You can't make it ethical. Animals are not breeding machines and money-making machines, so even if you were to look, if even someone buying a puppy was to look at the conditions that the mother is kept in or their siblings are kept in, it's still, even if they're given little palaces in their little sheds, still doesn't make it right, so we'd be trying to kind of get to the root of the issue and try and change people's values and how they look at it inherently, rather than just trying to make it a little bit more humane or a little bit more, I guess, improve welfare standards. We're looking for it to be reformed completely, and by reformed we mean abolished.
Okay, you do a lot of work for greyhounds as well, don't you?
At the moment, our priority is hare coursing, so it would be connected to the greyhound racing industry. So that's our number one, and there's actually some legislation that's going to be introduced in September. First stage, a bill by Paul Murphy, TD, who will be introducing a bill to ban hare coursing. So that will help save the thousands of hares that are used for this every year, as well as the dogs.
Do you occasionally work on the issue of greyhounds in general, like, as regards? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. We're big supporters of the nationwide campaign to ban greyhound racing, and protesting the greyhound stadiums and having meetings with politicians about the issue is definitely high on our agenda, and it does tie in with the hare coursing industry, because it's the greyhound racing industry that is connected with the Irish Coursing Club, because they keep the stud book for the greyhounds. So for us, getting rid of hare coursing is a step in the right direction to banning greyhound racing, because they are so intrinsically tied. So once we get this bill moving, and hopefully it will be successful, then we see it as a window into ban greyhound racing next.
I believe that Primetime in RTE brought out a report on the issue of greyhounds a year or two ago. I haven't seen that report yet. Could you tell me a bit more about what was in it?
Yeah, it's called Running for Their Lives. It was a great investigation done in July of 2019. It's very upsetting to watch, but it basically goes undercover into the greyhound racing industry, and it exposes what happens to the dogs when they are no longer of use or value to the greyhound breeders or trainers. It is very graphic. It's upsetting to watch, but it's, I think, a must-watch for everyone, especially for people on the fence about the issue. You need to look at this documentary to get an idea of what really goes on.
And the government give millions of euro every year to the greyhound industry, don't they?
They do. 16.8 million was the amount last year, so a huge amount. And this is taxpayers' money. I definitely didn't volunteer to give my taxes for this industry, so we would be urging everyone to write to their TDs and ask them to channel this money into something worthwhile. So that could be community projects, it could be directing into charities, something ethical, something that's going to help. Don't give 16.8 million to an animal abusing industry.
Just this in my head at the moment, the cover coming up. You are against horse racing as well, are you?
We are, absolutely, and they were given about 60 million last year.
Right. Are there similar kind of stories in the horse racing industry as regards?
Definitely. There's about maybe 15,000 racehorses bred in Ireland every year. Thousands are also sent to slaughterhouses every year because they're no longer of any use to the racing industry. So it's exactly the same thing. It's using animals against their will to make money. It's not a fun day out for the dogs. It's not a fun day out for the horses. And people need to reflect on that and think, what's happening to these horses? What happens when they're no longer profitable? And even when you see horse racing, you see how they're being whipped and kicked. It's not ethical, it's not humane, it's not kind. And I think as a society, we've moved on from these.
Yeah, just talk about greyhounds again. I covered a demonstration by the Alliance for Animal Rights a couple of years or two ago outside the GPO. I interviewed Bernie Wright and a couple of other people there, and it was about, Bernie was saying that a lot of greyhounds in Ireland get shipped to China. Is that true?
Yeah, all over the world, mostly to the UK, but some would be sent to Australia, China, Pakistan, all over the place. So there's basically it makes the point that even if they're not killed in Ireland after they're no longer of use, the traceability still disappears. We don't know where half of them end up, what happened to them, and most of them are just go on to continue greyhound racing in other countries, and then again they'll be either passed on or killed when they're no longer of use. So it's a horrible industry any way you look at it. And the government needs to do more to stamp it out.
And I believe that China have even more than other countries an appalling record for looking after animals, don't they?
Well, there's no animal welfare legislation, so there's no kind of minimum standard. However, I wouldn't consider China or any other country much worse than ourselves. I mean, we all do horrific things all over the world when it comes to animals, so I wouldn't deem them any worse than, any slaughterhouse here or any greyhound track here. It's all the one.
Okay, is there anything else you want to say about hare coursing?
Yeah, just, for people who want to help get hare coursing banned, now is the time to contact your local TDs and get them to support Paul Murphy's bill. It will be introduced in September. It'll be first stage. A few months after that, it'll go for a debate. A few months after that, it'll go for a vote. So it's very important that you get onto your TDs, make them highlight this issue, make them realise as a constituent you want it banned, and that would really help a lot with the campaign.
And he's getting much feedback from politicians as regards whether they're going to support it?
Well, all the more kind of socialist progressive parties are supporting it. So the Social Democrats are supporting it. Obviously, Paul Murphy from Rise, his party, is supporting it. Then we have the Solidarity Party, People Before Profit, Independence for Change. All of these groups have pledged their support. Green Party agree in essence, but they're likely to vote whatever way the government's voting. So we're really looking to get people to contact Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and if we can get even one of those to agree with us, then the rest will probably follow suit.
And Labour as well, I think. Don't forget about Labour.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to work on them as well, definitely.
Okay, Laura, it was great talking to you today, and I'll come back to you again for another interview in the future.
Yeah, perfect.
Before you go, is there anything else in summary you would like to tell our listeners about your work for animals in general?
Yeah, well, we are a vegan organisation. We see all animals as equal, as sentient, and the biggest thing you can do for animals is to go vegan. So we have information packs and guides that you can access on our website, and that's naracampaigns.org. So that's a huge step in the right direction. And then we've protests twice a week, every week. If anyone wants to get involved and help, we'd appreciate it.
Are you based in Dublin?
We are based in Dublin, but we do travel around the country as often as we can. Now, at the moment, with the health crisis, we're staying in Dublin for now, but hopefully in a few months we'll be able to start travelling around again, and we'd love to hear from people all over the country.